Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. I apologize if there's music in the background. There is a darty happening next door. So recently, Tobias Bernard, who is part of the GNOME team, I believe the design team, he posted a blog post about his GNOME shell design dreams, which goes over a bunch of different concepts that they're thinking about adding to GNOME and just looking into working on. And I think some of these concepts are pretty cool. For the last few release cycles of GNOME, it's just been pure polish, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but there hasn't really been any major design changes recently in the GNOME desktop. Not really any huge ones since GNOME 40, and then the smaller one is adding the little activity dots right there. As well as I was actually able to implement many of these things as GNOME extensions using AI. Now, I'm not going to be publishing this code because it is buggy AI slop, and I only like to publish code that I can back proudly. But with these AI extensions, we can actually see some of these features, how they might actually work in action. I have just an interactive demo on how they could work. So as you can see here in this blog post, he talks about how GNOME has seen some minor refinements over the past release cycles. I did not mean to copy what Tobias said in my intro, but some of these have been relatively complete plans, whereas others are more vague ideas that need more research and prototype. The GNOME shell user interface has mostly seen minor refinements and quality of life updates in past release cycles, but on the design side, they've explored a lot of longer term things that they'd like to see happen in GNOME. Some of these have been relatively complete plans, and others have been more vague ideas that need more research and prototyping. So Tobias here, he's not a GNOME developer, he's only a designer. So basically, the GNOME design team actually designs these features, and then it's up to the GNOME devs and the wider GNOME community to actually make these features happen. Now, I'm going to go a little bit out of order because I want to go to the first one, because in my GNOME implementation here that has all those features, this is just the most apparent thing when you first look at the desktop, and that is the transparent panel. So this has been a long-awaited and discussed feature that just never made it over the finish line. The idea is simple, and they point to other mobile OSs already implementing this, and that is a transparent title bar that actually will adapt to your wallpaper. So if I change the background right here to something a little bit lighter, let's try this one because it's literally white. As you can see here, now that the wallpaper is light, the status icons are actually dark, so you can actually be able to see it on top of the wallpaper. And then if I were to maximize a window, it goes back to being just black. Or if I go to the overview, it's the normal overview panel. But then when I'm on my desktop here, it will actually adapt to the wallpaper, which is cool. I do think this is a good step in modernizing the appearance of GNOME, because this black title bar at the top has literally been inside of GNOME since the initial release of GNOME 3, although it was a little bit more skeuomorphic back in the day. Now it's just a pure black title bar. So I do think this is a good change. I also think that maybe GNOME should take some design influence from the widely popular Blur My Shell extension. Pretty much every single Rice GNOME setup I see uses this extension. People love this extension. I think it's beautiful. So that could be another source of design inspiration they could take from when redesigning how the panel looks appearance-wise. There was a pull request for this back in 2019 to actually make this happen, which did not get merged, but there is a more modern revived pull request right here from 2023, and it seems like there's been recent activity here, so this may very well make its way into a future GNOME release soon. I will say this guy right here suggests adding some drop shadows for added contrast, which Elementary OS does, and this design mockup does not. My vibe-coded version of this does add some drop shadows, and as you can see, it does make it a little bit more readable on the wallpaper, so I do like that suggestion. I do think this should be a feature that could be toggled on and off, because I can't imagine there may be wallpapers where this just does not work on. Like, I bet I could find a wallpaper in here where it looks bad. Yeah, for example, this default GNOME wallpaper, this is not the move, because the extension right here detects a dark spot, so it uses white. But then over here, it detects a bright spot, so it uses black. And then back over here, it goes back to white. And this just does not look coherent. Again, this could be fine-tuned. This is a slop AI extension that I made just to demo this idea. Yeah, here's another wallpaper. This just doesn't look right to me. And this is one where I do think it should be black on the top, but I just don't think it looks that good. So I do think they should allow toggling this on and off depending on the wallpaper. But here with the default GNOME wallpaper, it looks great. Now next up, they're talking about changing how GNOME search works. The coherent and fluid spatial model was one of the proudest achievements of GNOME 40 when you navigate the GNOME shell interface. Elements always come from somewhere and exit to somewhere else. But there's a few areas where they've never been able to extend this ethos to, and this includes the GNOME self search, which replaces the entire overview of search results when you start typing. So this creates some problems here. Yes, I'm not on vanilla GNOME, I'm on my distro StillOS, which ships a customized GNOME, but I can still showcase some of the problems with this design on this GNOME setup. And what this allows you to do is you can just basically quickly get whatever GNOME applications you need for your work onto a workspace, and then you have all your workspaces set up ready to go with whatever apps you need. However, if I go to the search right here, if I type Firefox and I want to drag it to a workspace, I can't because we're still in this full screen search view right here. And so with that, as you can see right here, they have a demo where they go to the activities, then they start typing for search, and it actually has a new pop-up right here. And so what this demo didn't show, but what I imagine the use case for this would be, say I didn't have Firefox in my dash, but I can throw in GNOME text editor right here, GNOME files, and I have my apps right here. But then let's say I want to add Firefox. It's not on my dash, but I want it on my second workspace right here. I just type Firefox, it pops up, and then I can just simply drag it over to the next workspace right here, as you can see. Or if I'm in the show applications view and I want, let's say, I don't know, weather, I can grab it and I can just drag it up here. And when you pair this with the other workspaces change, which I'm going to demo in a second later, this can make using the search to actually open apps to a certain workspace a lot more efficient. I will say this workflow does remind me a little bit of the Cosmic workspace pop-up and a little bit of KRunner as well, but more so of Cosmic. They actually point to other third-party apps that especially macOS has, like Alfred, which I use on my Mac, where it opens up sort of a search window like this. Although it can do more than search, you can extend it, mod it. Here it shows controlling your music. There's also Raycast, which when I had to use a Windows computer and I didn't have the GNOME overview or Alfred from my Mac, I did try out Raycast on a Windows computer one time. I will say I can recommend both Alfred and Raycast if you haven't checked either of them out. But GNOME is taking inspiration from that to actually have a more advanced search that can actually add actions to the search overview. So they have a little screenshot of how that can look right here. This would require new APIs and apps to actually support those APIs. So I do see this being supported by GNOME apps, but a lot of desktop agnostic apps like maybe a web browser might not be supported. I mean, Ubuntu does ship GNOME, and Ubuntu's like the target distro for developers. But at the same time, let's just be real, like Discord's not going to implement this. But overall, this is an idea that I really like. I think this is a very welcome change. And let's go over to the next one. So the next two I'm sort of going to combine into one topic. Editable quick settings. So this is a pattern that has seen wide adoption across all OS interfaces over the past decade for obvious reasons. Few essential pieces of information at your fingertips, easy toggleable frequently needed system settings without going to the settings app, and the current implementation for GNOME right now works pretty well. However, if you've ever used like an iPhone control center, you can put whatever options you want in there, and I think Android does the same thing as well. So they're talking about having more additional, even niche things people would add to the quick settings, and they point out the caffeine GNOME extension. This is actually another widely popular GNOME extension. I even pre-install it with StillOS, but you turn on caffeine and it makes your computer not go to sleep. This is very useful if you're maybe running something like a video render, or you're compiling code, or you're running an AI agent and you don't want your computer to turn off. So they just want to add something similar to GNOME. As you can see, they have a wide amount of options right here. Now combine this because they want to simplify the calendar view. They say the calendar pop-up has always been an odd mix of things with loosely related elements that have differently wild amounts of content. Sometimes there's a lot of notifications but no calendar events or clocks, and lots of world clocks but don't get many notifications. That makes sense. For example, I work for NetBird, which is a German company. So sometimes when I'm online, it's like midnight in Germany. So I personally have a German world clock because of that. But before I worked at NetBird, I would have never needed that feature at all. And then they talk about other systems, like they specifically mention Android. You have your quick settings at the top and then your notifications under it. And so they want to simplify the calendar and then move notifications to actually be part of the quick settings, which this right screen especially looks directly ripped off from Android, which I don't think is a bad thing. As they say, good artists copy, great artists steal. But I will say I just don't really like the calendar view without the notifications. So right here I have my AI implementation of both the editable quick settings. So I have the Mosaic extension, which I'm going to showcase another feature that they're talking about later. but if I don't want that in my quick settings, I can just remove it and then it will show up down here instead. Now I don't have Mosaic in here. But then let's say I have some notifications. I added a little keyboard shortcut to actually give me some notifications. So for the mail test where I have a few emails, they're actually stacked right here. And then if I go to the 2 more notifications button, it will collapse the quick settings up here and showcase my notifications like this. I see the potential of this, but the problem is this is just like a pop-up dialog, so it just seems small. I personally think maybe they could turn it into a sidebar, like Windows 10 had its little action center, which had both your control center as well as all your notifications. And Budgie has its Raven menu, which has sort of applets, which are kind of like widgets as well as your notifications. I think that is a very good way to actually implement this rather than having it be like a pop-up right here. Ignore this broken scroll bar, this is AI slop. But then when we go to the calendar view right here, again, the appearance is a little weird, AI slop, but just like, let me add my world clocks. I just feel like it is kind of out of character for GNOME to have like an entire dedicated section for all of this stuff in like the middle of the title bar, because GNOME just feels like a very minimal desktop. And yes, your notifications were here originally, but without the notifications, it just feels like, why couldn't this all be a part of like a sidebar or something? Like maybe just copy the Raven menu, put your calendar and your tasks and your world clocks inside like a sidebar with your quick settings, and then also have a spot for your notifications. I don't really like the applets or notifications thing, but I will say a lot of people don't even know that you can put your weather or your calendar events or even world clocks up here. And I think most people, other than notifications, just straight up don't even open this menu. So I think having like a sidebar that could have like stuff up here and then your calendar events and then your notifications all in one sidebar, that could be a good alternative design to have something like this. And then you could move the clock to the right here and just have all of this be a part of one sidebar. So I kind of like the idea of notifications, but I don't really like the idea of just this blank calendar view now. That said, I'm not a professional designer. Maybe Tobias knows more about design than me and I'm missing something. But if you are a designer and I'm missing something, let me know in the comments below. I do think that this editable quick settings feature is a really good idea though. What if you had an API for apps to actually be able to add quick settings here? And what if this could actually replace the tray menu on GNOME? Because GNOME is notorious for not having a tray menu, and there just isn't really a good alternative built into the GNOME desktop without extensions. What if Discord could actually add a tray icon here to actually set, maybe you want to be online or do not disturb or invisible instead of having a tray icon? That would be a way cleaner implementation. Obviously Discord again probably wouldn't implement that because Linux is too niche, but just the idea. Now next up they talk about drag and drop window organization. So this is something they experimented with up to GNOME 40. And so on current GNOME, when you're dragging stuff around workspaces, you have just tiny workspaces at the top, or you can drag to the one to the left or right. And so this is a pretty simple concept, and they actually already have a extension called Spatial Overview that is testing out this feature. So for this demo, I'm actually using that extension rather than an AI one. And then instead of dragging a window to the top workspaces right here, instead it gives a little grid of all my workspaces and I just drag it like that. Now, one problem with this approach is once you have a certain amount of workspaces, this just gets really small, and I feel like it would be better to maybe be like a grid where maybe some workspaces would be at the bottom. Maybe something like the old KDE workspace grid. But I do like the idea of this change. It just makes the workspace flow a little bit more natural. Maybe if you're new to GNOME, it'll be a little bit more intuitive to actually get you to start using workspaces. So while visually I don't like it when there's a lot of workspaces, I do think this is a good feature idea to actually point people into using workspaces. An analogy I like to point to for sort of this type of design is Portal. Portal doesn't have a tutorial. The game itself is a tutorial. The first few levels actually teach you how to use the portal gun just by showing you how to use game mechanics rather than giving you an actual step-by-step tutorial. And I honestly think as a feature, this is almost the portal of teaching you how to use workspaces in GNOME. Now the next one is Mosaic and Tiling. So they've been talking about how they've wanted something like tiling window management in GNOME for quite a while. And I remember when this came out, this was like 2023? But back in 2023, Tobias actually showcased this mosaic tiling concept right here, where it will automatically move windows around and things like that. This video in the new blog post is the same as this old blog post. There have been numerous extensions trying to add tiling window management to GNOME. The most popular right now is Tiling Shell, but you may even remember extensions extensions, like back in the day there was Pop Shell, which was widely popular. I'm not gonna lie, I thought they discontinued this extension until I just looked it up for this video, but looks like some people are still maintaining it for like GNOME 50 because the Pop OS team over at System 76 are now building the Cosmic desktop rather than maintaining a GNOME-based desktop. That said, this Mosaic concept they have right here, which is different from regular window tiling, they actually already have a actively maintained extension implementing this. So let me add that extension back to quick settings right here. So now when I open a window, it will just open in the center of my screen, and if I resize it, it just resizes from the center, and I can't really move it around. And then if I open another window, now this other window right here for files is on the side, and it will move depending on just where the best spot is to have it. So if I maybe make this bigger, now it will move to the left right here. It adapts, and I can just click it and go to the next window. Or if I make it small right here, if I actually make both windows small right here, it will automatically go side by side. I can even drag and drop it to the right of my screen. It will automatically tile it for me. I like the idea of this. I will say I'm not a huge user of tiling window manager, so I may be wrong about how I expect this behavior to work on something like Sway or, I don't know, Hyperland. But I don't really like it automatically placing my windows for me and setting a custom size for the windows because some apps might just not look good in that setup. So this gives you the freedom to still be able to resize things and use it at like a normal size that the window's supposed to be used at, while still giving you quick access to other windows, still letting you have a tiling flow just from like putting your window on the side right here, without having to learn a bunch of complicated keyboard shortcuts that I just don't have time to learn. Maybe I'll learn them eventually so I can get faster at working in a GNOME desktop, but I don't have to learn it if I want to use this feature. But at the same time, I'm probably just going to continue to use the normal GNOME workflow for me. That works good enough. Now, next up is window switching, and this is something I was not able to implement with AI cleanly, but they talk about how the Alt-Tab experience is something they've wanted to improve. There is a tension between wanting to keep the list of items manageable, which is why windows are grouped by app, and the ability to switch to the last few windows quickly, regardless of what app they belong to. Most systems either have our current app grouping approach, which they say Apple platforms also have, or they just expose all windows in a gigantic multi-spread, which Windows does. So what they want to have happen is have their most recent windows right here ungroup so you can quickly get back to them, whereas like some of the windows you've had open for a while that may be multiple windows for the same app, those get grouped into one apps. And on top of that, this just new concept of an alt-tab switcher just looks really clean. Way cleaner than this workflow that GNOME defaults to. If you go into the GNOME keyboard shortcut settings, you can actually switch your alt-tabs to, instead of being switch applications, which by default is alt-tab on GNOME, I changed it to be switch windows. So I basically swapped the keyboard shortcuts where on a normal GNOME session, switch windows would be super tab, whereas on mine that is the alt tab behavior. So you can switch this behavior up. I do feel like this concept is just the best of both worlds. It's a way cleaner looking design. I really like this. Next up, login screen grid. I'm not going to talk about this too much. This is just a better looking login screen. I like this. Go do it, GNOME. And then lastly, we have dynamic battery icons, which they wanted to make the battery icon more expressive and easier to read at a glance. They have some icon concepts right here. So this one, it's charging right now, so it will make it green and give you a little charging icon. Normal battery usage would just be white. When you're starting to get low, it turns into yellow. And then when your laptop needs to be plugged in soon or it's going to die, it will turn red and give you an exclamation mark. So if you want to see how this might look like on a GNOME desktop, I do have this implemented. This is a virtual machine, so it can't see my battery, but I planned ahead. I got a little keyboard shortcut to actually switch between these modes. So this would be normal mode, and then, oh no, I've been using my laptop for a bit. It's starting to get low. Then it will turn yellow, and then, oh no, I actually really need to plug my laptop in now. Then it turns red. Another very welcome change. I don't really see a downside to this. It does look like these were completely ripped off from iOS. Again, good artist copy, great artist steal. That said, one thing I want to point out, it does seem like for both this and the transparent tiles, they specifically mention mobile OSs, actually, as well as the notification center right here. It seems like they took inspiration from Android. This is not anything that the GNOME team specifically said in this blog post, but I do think it's worth pointing out. There's been a experimental patch set on top of GNOME to actually make it work well on mobile phones, and you can run this on post-market OS and things like that. I know I used to be the mobile Linux guy back in the day. Maybe I should do a video on this in the future. Let me know if that's something you guys may want to see. But I'm wondering if some of these design inspirations that they're taking are to actually make the GNOME mobile experience better. And I'm wondering if someday GNOME Shell may actually become a mobile desktop as well as a regular desktop. And this is a different thing from Phosh, which was developed by the Purism team for the Librem 5. And it works on other Linux phones too, but that's just the lineage of Phosh. And no hate to Phosh. Phosh is a great project, but it does seem like a duplicate of effort to basically have an entirely different desktop made for phones that just copies GNOME's designs to try and look like GNOME. Why do all that when GNOME already exists and GNOME itself already has many things a mobile phone would need, like a app launcher right here? They would just maybe replace this with your frequent, which is what they would maybe just replace workspaces with dedicated apps to fit on a phone screen, which is what GNOME Mobile does. You already have a good control center right here. Why not reuse it? With that, it makes a lot of sense to move towards a more unified approach to the GNOME stack on a phone and just reuse the existing GNOME desktop environment. With all of that, what do you think of all of these changes? Do you like them? Do you not like them? I will say the future of GNOME is exciting with some of these designs coming out. That said, thank you for watching this video. I'll have another one up here that you may be interested in. You can shoot me a sub right here. Really helps the channel, like genuinely. Comment and like for the algorithm, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.